Hello, sir. My name is Anshul Gupta. Thanks a lot for writing the book. So there's a small observation from which the question will come. Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal, in his book The Land of Seven Rivers, mentions that the word Hindu is a phonetical error which was done by the Persians from Sindhu, which he says Sapt Sindhu, and it was done Hapt Hindu. So before this word, there is also what is called Sanatan Dharam, which means the Dharam for everybody at all times. And perhaps that's why Hindus now or before have always tried to find the truth in all world religions always. So my question is that you have mentioned that there was never a revolt from Hindus ever. So when did we start recognizing ourselves or accepting ourselves that we are Hindus? If it is a phonetical error or if it is something that has been imposed from outside, because I know that I've been to Arab countries and there they call everybody from India as Hindustani. So it is in their vocabulary. So when did we start recognizing and grouping ourselves or accepting this word Hindu?
Now, whether outsiders called us Hindus first or we called ourselves Hindus first, and whether Hindu is the right word or not, these are matter of semantics. The fundamentally the identification of our civilization, which unlike the Abrahamic world, that is Judaism, Christianity and Islam, and I would even add Marxism to that, where they are based on what can be called deductive logic. In other words, the premise is given that mine is the only God, Jehovah is the only God, or Christ is the Son of God, or Allah is the only God that there is, or what Karl Marx said, that there is no God, as if he had conducted a survey all over the universe and found that there is no God. Now, what I am trying to say is that this is given, and then you become a Christian or a Muslim or Jew or, well, let's not include Marx all the time. Whereas Hinduism is based on inductive logic. Inductive logic meaning things that arise from the ground, except for karma and bhagya, which we have faith in, and which makes a lot of logic because it's as near physics as any religion can be, cause and effect. There is a distinct difference between us and the Abrahamics. Now, whether you call me Hindu or a Sanatani or a non-Sanatani is your choice.
But to answer your question, you are looking for a certain time frame. When we began really differentiating ourselves as people different from, although it would be difficult to lay down a date in black and white, but certainly between 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, yes, this consciousness of who are foreigners and who we are and why we are different. This again began, certainly was this consciousness and thinking became solidified during the time of Krishna, where foreign invaders or unwelcome visitors were described as Mlecha, Asura, Rakshasas, various terms, but differing terms, although these are not incidentally the same terms. Here today, thanks to the telesoap serials, and the terms Asur, Danav, Daitya, Rakshas are used intermingly. They are different communities, but we shall leave that aside. But certainly between 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, this consciousness says, yes, we are dharmic, we are inheritors or we are adherents of a dharmic civilization, therefore dharmic or Sanatanis. Others who do not believe in this or who seek to harm us are therefore Mlechas. That roughly around that period.
In 19...
It was certainly very much present by the time the Mauryans came on the scene, yes.
Go ahead. No, you finish, please. I'm sorry.
That, for example, the Greeks were called the Yavanas. From a different place and belonging to the Yavanas, but Yavanas in our history, Puranic history means, well, just about any villainous community visiting from outside. But for a particular geopolitical region, Yavanas also meant Greeks. But yes, people of a different place, of a different ethos. You were about to...
No, I was only making a small point. What I learned from my father, who was no scholar of religion, but when he went to Boston to study for 3 years. In 1929, the first thing he was asked is, what are you, young man? By an American, white American. So he said, I am from India. Oh, that makes no sense to me. Are you a Hindu? Then he said, yes. He said, are you a Hindu or are you a Hindu Muslim or a Hindu Christian? You know, that was the, I'm sure he didn't ask this in one sentence, but this is the belief was, are you a Hindu Parsi or are you a Hindu Christian or a Hindu Muslim? Which made my father at that age, he told me, he went there at the age of probably 19 or 20, that obviously this subcontinent belongs to us and the others are the secondary citizens, which is not exactly written in our constitution, unfortunately. But then my father had nothing to do with the constitution.
So basically the books say that the worship of Krishna that came in the form of Bhakti Marg, it basically was like a precursor to Buddhism and Jainism, which were born out of frustration due to rituals of Brahmanism. So is that really true?
Which part of the question are you referring to is true? What is the truth you seek?
Did the worship of Krishna, was the worship of Krishna born out of frustration from Brahmanism, the rituals of Brahmanism?
To get to that answer, Krishna in his own life was no less a radical. So any Brahmanical frustration I don't think really applies here. Krishna in his own lifetime at quite a young age, even before he had reached Mathura, really exhorted his people to stop worship of Indra and start worshipping Govardhan. I think you may be familiar with that. Is my voice carrying on?
Yeah.
So, personally speaking, Krishna himself was no less of a radical. Coming to Brahmanical rituals or if you want a divergence between Brahmanical rituals and the non-Brahmanical way of. The Bhakti movement per se was included all elements, including what you term frustration. I would slightly like to differ here. It was an outcome of the pent-up feelings and necessity of the Indian populace when faced with a truly grave threat. So we did need a centralized kind of figure to look up to. Subconsciously, this was also our way of matching the centralized one God, one book ethos we were confronted with. But the worship of Krishna, yes, maybe in the form of the childhood Krishna, Balagopal, Murali Gopal, Laddu Gopal, the Bhakti Krishna, preceded Buddhism and Jainism, but the eulogy of Krishna was certainly there even during his age. It just took on a different form. The excess of bhakti was because, well, an excess of peace and ahimsa had dulled our Kshatriya spirit. In such an eventuality, naturally, bhakti then remains the only thing to follow. So Krishna taking on overtones of bhakti at the beginning of the medieval period would have been a result of that, of what you say. But not entirely out of any anti-Brahmanical revolt. I mean, that was confined to very small pockets of India. Ramcharitmanas by Tulsidas again made Sri Ram the central figure, and that was also during the medieval period where we needed. So now this was our own psychological and civilizational response to the very grave threat of one book, one God, and one prophet. I hope that has somewhat answered your question.
I have a comment first, Praful sir and Iyer sir. You mentioned the first armed resistance was probably 1857. Beg to disagree over there. We've had lectures now And also we have a small project in Srijan Foundation called the Indian History Academy. Mona is actually one of the writers in that. So we are documenting the Hindu resistance across, starting with 622 AD, if I'm not wrong, 36, when the first invasions happened. There's always been an idea of Hindu confederations, which actually even won back Kabul as early as, 800, 900 somewhere, 800 AD. Also, Smita Mukherjee has recently talked about the rise of Indian national consciousness under the Marathas. So it was actually that perhaps large scale, more recent was perhaps the Marathas. Would you like to comment? And then I have two more questions follow up after.
Could I be permitted to answer
Yes,
this? All of this audience would be happy to know that it is Sir himself who has written the Saffron Awakening. The very first chapter discussing in great detail the continual and unceasing Hindu resistance from 636 on. So it is not that Sir is not unaware. Now there is a particular reason he stresses on the 1857 events. Now this was after a fairly long period in our history that two diverse and two very different communities came together for entirely different reasons on such a major scale. And even that petered out. So in the modern age, probably you could call it the first ever. And that 1857 event led to a whole lot of cataclysmic changes within India. So that is a central reason he keeps, in fact, even during the course of our work, this 1857 thing keeps coming up. But I would like to heartily recommend the Saffron Awakening written by Sir himself. The very first chapter has all the details of Hindu resistance from 636 AD onwards and continuing. I hope we are agreed on that.
So, could you talk a little bit about, you talked about Krishna's idea of unification of India. Could you talk a little bit about that? And, was he really unifying India, or, the general perception is it was a dharma yuddha between Kauravas and Pandavas, and that's all that he was doing. Yes, there was Rajasuya Yagya, which Yudhishthir went on after that, but that's perhaps limited.
No, Pandavas and Kauravas fine, but they were only a corollary of Krishna, at best. So that I don't think is important. That the question is that you give me a corner of India where Krishna is not worshipped today. Manipur,
Yeah.
Krishna. Kutch in the west, Krishna. Even Kashmiris, I have met several Pandits who will tell you about, although they are technically Shaivites and so on and so forth, but they admire Krishna. Jammu में तो और भी ज़्यादा है. And you go down to Kanyakumari and you will find Vaishnavas there. Okay? So, if a person who lived and died, let us say, or ascended to wherever, if you can consider him a god avatar, say 2,500 years ago that Mr. Iyer has been emphasizing, or 3,000 years ago, till this day, if that legend can be so widespread, what is the face of, what are you looking for in unification?
And to come to your the specifics of your question, was his intention really political unification? Well, we can say with confidence, not just with confidence, with complete justification, a big yes. But then your own question contained the answer. You asked a question about Rajasuya Yagya. What is a Rajasuya Yagya? Why did kings and emperors, small kings could not, why did emperors undertake the Ashwamedh and the Rajasuya? The Rajasuya and the Ashwamedh were entirely political programs. What does a king do? He dispatches a royal horse across kingdoms. Now either you give the horse passage, which means you accept vassalhood. If you want to obstruct the horse, then you have to fight. What is that? That is a clear political statement. Either you submit or you fight, or if you are stronger, then I have to submit to you. So the very fact that he made the Pandavas undertake first the Rajasuya and then after the Kurukshetra war the Ashwamedh, that itself was political. And that was not done for just cultural unity. Culturally, India was always one. I mean, even Duryodhana and his brothers used to do puja and havans and yagyas. So culturally, there was no difference between us. But why this? And why the Kurukshetra war? So I think your question contains the clearest answer.
Done in the time of Ramayana also.
Yes, it was done. It was done even much before the age of Sri Ram. It was
Dashrath himself.
the forefathers and ancestors of Dashrath.
Okay, forefather.
Dashrath belonged to that lineage.
Yeah, sir, I just want to say
Yes.
another thing. It's the perception that, during the times of our Rama, Krishna, Mahabharata and Ramayana, all the leaders, they always had arms, with them. I think it was with Buddhism and Jainism that Ahimsa and all that came, and it made India so weak that the people from the Islam and other people came in, and even Greeks also before that.
Well, while not fundamentally disputing what you have said, sir, we are familiar with the saying, Ati sarvatra varjayet, the excess of anything is bad. Now, the achievements of our Sanatan forefathers lent us a long period of peace and stability for these versions of our dharmic journey to flourish. Excess of rituals, including Pashubali, and he would have turned people away from them, which then led to an excess of ahimsa and the thought of ahimsa, which opened the doors for, well, we know what. So yes, one of the fundamental reasons, as we just pointed out, all our celestials and deities have weapons in their hands, is to continually remind us that life and freedom are never to be taken for granted. That is one of the core messages of our civilization. Liberty and freedom themselves are not to be taken for granted, and freedom itself is not free.
Good evening, sir. My name is Parth and I'm a lawyer, sir. Congratulations to you for your book.
Well, thank you.
My questions, it's a threefold question. It's addressed to both of you, and you've been an MP and you, I believe you're an academician. First question is that we all know what happened, how invaders came and destroyed our body politic, our society and everything. But another major reason for destruction of our original culture and our Vedic Paddhati, as well as even the original Manusmriti, which is being degraded so much, especially by a certain section of people. One of the reasons has been the immense unaccountable part that has been given historically or culturally to the Brahmins, which actually caused the downfall of our society. Well, if you see, one thing that Ambedkar and Gandhi both agreed on was that if the one system were to be established again, it should be established according to the book exactly, then it will be successful. And they were right. They were right. If somebody has read the Manusmriti, they would agree with it. So my question is, one threat that we've always faced and we still are facing is this scourge of greedy, unaccountable caste power politics that has been going on, especially since 1947. How do we improve upon this and make sure the mistakes that we committed in the past do not become the reasons again for our downfall in the future and for the future generation? My second question is, which is related to this also takes the form of regional politics. As we've seen recently how this Hindi versus Tamil and all of these things are going on, though the Prime Minister objectively rebuked that debate. But these things again come, be it from the northeast or from the south, that you are people from the north are imposing their culture when culturally we all are same. Sanskrit is the only language which sounds similar from a Tamilian's mouth and a North Indian's mouth. Accents in English may be different. My third question is that since you talked about unification of the country, Kautilya in 300 BC made sure a body politic was made in such a manner that till the time of Ashok, the country was totally safe and we had most immense military and economic prowess. How do we make sure going in the future that a sort of what you talked about Krishna Raj and not Ram Raj, I'm talking about righteousness is one thing, but a more valiant force, a more secured force, especially when people of my generation specifically, they have this sense of nationality as well as the fact that if we are united, we'll be secure. So how do we go ahead from here?
I'm a backward. So you can be absolutely sure that my answer will be objective. Please understand that the Brahmins have been, and I don't carry any particular brief for them, but they have been the preservers of our culture. And I know this from the experience in Gujarat, that had there been no Brahmins in Gujarat, and particularly the Nagars, who are also Brahmins, superior Brahmins, whatever, we would have been peculiar wild tribes in Gujarat. You see, and you can take today's example of Tamil Nadu. I think you no idea, I can imagine, I mean, I have a few Tamil friends, and not Mr. Iyer, I am not referring to him, is the amount of loss that the Tamil culture has suffered because they have virtually driven out the Brahmins. So that is one side of the picture. The other side is that, you know, anybody, when you are frustrated, you want to target someone, the fewest or the physically the weakest are the ones to be targeted. And to that extent, the Brahmins have been very easy, soft targets. Now that does not mean that Brahmins have been perfect or they have been impartial always and consistently, you know, angels. No, they haven't been. But give them the credit for what they have done. And what are they today? They are not dominating the Indian scene. And to go on belaboring them, I think is really self-damaging, quite frankly.
My actually question was, the critics or the leftists do this, and how do we counter it?
We are coming to that. So
I've tried to give you an answer that you wouldn't be what you are, but for the Brahminical tradition. So I hope you are happy with the explanation.
But to come to the specific part of the query, how to promote a non-accountable pursuit of knowledge. Now, first of all, I think when you say that they have a stranglehold on the Shastras, I think that is exaggerating the power of the Brahmin community today. Not, I don't say this because I am one, but I mean, they are 5% of India's population. No vote bank power. Let's be very honest. They have zero vote bank power, no great political clout as such. So whatever regard you may or may not have would be for the knowledge part of it. But that apart, why don't we promote the study of our Shastras in an honest and open way? I mean, today no Brahmin has the power to say that only certain communities will read the Shastra. Today you can't do that. Yet, what are we doing to promote an honest and open study of the Shastras to really counter the mischief that is being played against us? The honest answer is we still are, let me be blunt here, we are still dependent for knowledge of our own history on these teleserials. And you know, ever since the Ekta Kapoorization of Indian history has begun, where that is leading us. What are we doing to counter it? Accepting blaming the Brahmin. Now what can he do? Accepting now he himself is struggling for his own survival. That is number one. Second part of your question was what? We don't want to miss any of you.
Regional divergences, they take a form of political divergences.
Here, Par, as Hindus, we have to be a bit forceful and unapologetic. If there is going to be a single national identity, we have got to enforce it. As simple as that. The moment someone says imposition and you lose your nerve, well, that is not the Krishna way or even the Rama way. As simple as that. I mean, fine. If you want a personal view, I do respect. Even respect is a pretty strong word. Well, I do tolerate, you may say. I tolerate the regional diversity. Tolerate. I certainly don't worship them. I hope you got the message. Now, but on a more serious note, I hope most of us, if not all, would have heard of a certain gentleman, Neeraj Chowdhury. He's no more now. A Bengali. In his autobiography, not autobiography on Unknown Indian, and the next big one he wrote, Thy Hand Great Anarch. He did bring up this question of Hindi, and even in Bengal there was the sentiment, this is Calcutta and Bengali is, well, you know. But Neeraj Chowdhury, himself a Bengali no doubt, he clearly wrote that there has to be a national language, and I do wish people of the Hindi belt will behave the way they are being accused of, imperialism. The point is, Hindi has never been imperialistic, and that is my big grouse. When you start shouting Hindi imperialism, what imperialism has Hindi done? Now, can anyone in this room name two of India's really imperial languages? You will be shocked. English is an imperial language, but it is not an Indian language. I said it is not even a language. Parsi is not an Indian language. Urdu is not even a language. It has no attribute of a language. Two Indian languages which have been born of this soil. Truly imperialist. Sanskrit is there, no doubt. Sanskrit. Tamil is right. Look at when they were at their prime. The Cholas carried Hinduism to Southeast Asia. The Southeast Asia you see today, and some of you would have traveled there, is largely the doing of the Cholas. Marathas carried our saffron flag to Balochistan. Beyond Balochistan up to Afghanistan. That is imperialism. So, well, if you are going to accuse the widest spoken language of imperialism, I would say, well, go ahead and behave imperialistic. Are we even doing that? We are busy corrupting the widest spoken language in India, corrupting it with, well, all sorts of...
But I think English is at least a unifying language, which has,
Sir, English, while not denying a lot of gifts English has given India, I would be very churlish to do so. All said and done, any language that has come from outside cannot truly unify you.
Hello everyone, my name is Srishti Nagarajan. So my question is to Garudia sir. What prompted you, or how did this thought occur to you to portray Krishna as a political leader, or let's say as a unifier of India, and not as how he's commonly perceived, as you just said, an avatar of Vishnu or a butter thief or something like that. So what prompted you to portray him in this role?
As a political leader and not as a religious avatar.
Because he was one. I mean, there is no doubt that he was a political strategist probably the rarest of one, and he was a military strategist as well. So that is the light in which one must portray him. Enough has been done, written, spoken about the Bhagavad Gita and his being a philosopher. So therefore we have not touched that, because there is no use repeating, and nobody is going to listen to me something that the great people have already talked about. But this is an aspect which was missing. That's why. Although perhaps in the end you would say that the Gita has done greater service to the Indian civilization than perhaps his political strategy or his military work. You may say that, that's up to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much for your time.